Shelter is one of the most important subjects there is in survival and in the Bible. A lot of us don't understand that how much the Bible speaks about shelters in their various types, and for good reason. God's birthday, the birthday of Jesus Christ on the earth, actually took place during a festival known as Tabernacles or Sukkot. This festival of shelters is an important landmark in God's plan for not only the end times, but our lives in general. In Leviticus chapter 23, we learn of a holiday called the Feast of Shelters, also known again as Sukkot. During this festival, the people of God were to go out into the wilderness and gather for themselves tree material or debris and create a temporary shelter which they were to dwell in for the next week. This debris hut, if you will, was a symbol that God set apart to separate and prepare his people for life in the days to come. It was a remembrance that would occur at the same time every year from that time until eternity. So all the way through the time of Jesus' return, this is a holiday that we should be celebrating. As a matter of fact, in the book of Revelation, we're also told that after the wedding supper of the Lamb, the people of God will gather together to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles with Jesus. In fact, once you study the scriptures in their context, you'll learn that by looking at the course of the priests at the time of the birth of Jesus, and also the seasons in which the shepherds were out in the fields and Herod had the census, you'll find that all of these things coincide with the Feast of Shelters. Celebrating the feast days of God in their proper context and timing is very important for us as believers in the last days. God, in his great wisdom, wanted to prepare us for survival in the end times. It only made sense that back at the time of the foundation of Israel, that he set apart a season where his people would literally go out and build a shelter to live in and camp for a week. This Moedim, or rehearsal, was one to be continued again all the way until the time of Jesus' return. This is a festival that we've been robbed of in the modern Christian church. Instead, we've taught the traditions of men as though they're the doctrines of God. We've substituted man-made holidays such as Christmas and Easter in place of the proper context of Jesus' birth, which is Sukkot, and his resurrection, Passover. It is important that we get back to the true root of biblical Christianity so that we can regain that which has been stolen from us, which is our biblical preparedness. God, in fact, wants us prepared for life and ministry in the last days. Those of us that want the blessings of God to come over our lives must be obedient to his plain teaching in the scripture. In Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 13 through 16, we're told that after the festival of the ingathering in the fall, that we were commanded as the people of God to go and celebrate Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, or as I call it, the Feast of Shelters, and celebrate this festival in honor of the ingathering that God had provided. So the harvest that had just been gathered, God obviously had provided that, and it was a remembrance of that time. If we were to have God's blessing over our produce and all the work we put our hand to in the following year, it was actually required that we celebrate this festival to receive that blessing. And in Zechariah 14, we're told that those that do not come to worship the Lord during the Festival of Tabernacles will not receive a blessing or rain over their crops or produce in the following year. So, on one hand, in Deuteronomy, we're told that those that do celebrate the festival will receive God's blessing of provision the following year. On the contrary, we're told those that do not will not receive his blessing of provision for the following year. So again, it's very important to remember this, because as we enter into the last days, it's going to be very important that we are celebrating this holiday. Not only does it prepare us on how to build a shelter, okay, from natural material, not only does it give us practice year after year by going out as a family and putting these shelters together so that in the time of trouble we're ready to do it at a moment's notice because we've practiced beforehand as God has commanded us to do, but it also gives us the ability to garner His blessing for being obedient in our preparedness. Now, it's also important to realize that when God commanded shelters to be built, that they served a very specific purpose. They were to be temporary shelters capable of being lived in for at least a week at a time. Now, we can find illustrations of this in Jonah and in the book of Isaiah. With the story of Jonah, we're told he was spit up on the beach from the belly of a great fish, and he went and overlooked the city of Nineveh. Now, we know that in his arrogance, he went and waited up on the hill just waiting for God to destroy this city, which didn't happen. But in the midst of his waiting, we're told that a tree grew up over him and provided him shade. That word is actually sukkah, or a temporary shelter that God Himself provided the arrogant preacher, and it protected him from the elements. Not only did it protect him from the heat of the day, but also the rain at night. So we're told in the context of the story that it gave him temporary dwelling, or a place to live. So not only did God plan ahead for us to be able to build a shelter that would keep us out of the harsh elements such as the sun by providing us with shade, but He also had planned all along for us to be able to build a natural shelter out of material around us that would keep us dry from the rain. Also warm, obviously, from the wintertime weather, which we're now entering into. So it's very important when building a shelter to have all these bases covered, because the last thing we want to be faced with is getting in a hypothermic state or hyperthermic state, one in which we're too hot. So if these two things can be avoided, we can better manage our core body's temperature by learning to build a couple simple shelter configurations. Now, when choosing a personal space, it is important to take into consideration what we call the 4 W's: wood, water, widowmakers, and weather. Of the 4 W's, you want to take into consideration the environment in which you're going to place or build your shelter for the night, or the week in the context that we've been talking about in this episode. Wood. We want to make certain that there is an ample amount of wood for us to not only perhaps build the shelter, but stoke up the fires that we need to keep it going and keep us warm throughout the night. Water. We want to make certain that we have access to water, which, as you can see right down here, there's a natural draw and there's a creek down there. So we want to be within a safe walking distance to good water. Widowmakers. We want to look up, down, and all around to make certain that there is nothing that's going to fall on us or on our shelter in the night should a storm blow in or the wind blow. And lastly, weather. We want to make certain that we're out of adverse weather. So instead of camping at the peak of an open ridge, we may consider dropping down to give us a natural wind break. We want to make certain that the opening of our shelter does not face the prevailing winds, which is going to just cool us off all night and drive any rain that comes in directly into our shelter. We want to keep these things in mind when setting up any type of camp, regardless of whether it's in a natural shelter, a tent, tarp, or a hammock. This week's survival tip is brought to you by Lester River Bushcraft. When discussing shelter, I like to look at my clothing as the very first line of defense I have against the elements. Now, I'm wearing a Lester River Boreal shirt, also known as an anorak. This is a blanket weight wool shirt that I would wear as my outer garment in around here where I live most of the year, okay? So for 3 seasons out of the year, you'll often find me wearing this shirt. Again, it's going to cut the wind off me. It's going to maintain up to 70% of its insulative value even when it gets wet. So even if I get soaked in the rain, it will still keep me warm. It's going to be heavy, but it'll keep me warm. I can wring it out. It will dry out a little bit quicker than you would cotton or anything else in comparison. So the Leicester River Boreal shirt is my preferred shirt as far as winter time or even spring and fall usage is concerned. Now, this is my outer layer. I am dressing in layers because I don't want to sweat. If I get too hot and I'm overworking, chopping wood, dragging timber to make a shelter, whatever the case may be, this would enable me to strip off this one layer and begin to cool myself down. And the other layers I have underneath this are all designed to trap heat closer to my body. So you want loose, nice, airy layers. So this shirt is loose and feels very good on me, and it's trapping air in and heating it up with my body's natural core temperature. So that's what you want to go for. So your outer garment should be some type of a wool type shirt or an anorak, which can be made out of cotton canvas or oilcloth as well. For my pants, I'm wearing a 12-ounce cotton canvas pant. Again, it cuts the wind doesn't penetrate them. However, if they do get soaked through, they become quite cumbersome. They're heavier and they're very difficult to dry out. So later in the year, once we get a lot of snow on the ground, or if it's in a very wet area, I might switch over to some type of a waterproof pant instead. I would have these as a backup, but I would go for a waterproof pant completely. And then of course I'm going to be wearing more or less my muck boots, the Arctic Pros, through most of the winter months. That way my feet don't get wet and don't get cold at all. The problem with those boots, however, is that if your feet sweat, you will build up moisture, and again, they're much more difficult to dry out, especially in cold conditions. Now once the anorak is removed, you can see the other layers that I have. I have a secondary layer on top, and this is a simple vest, okay? It's a quilted, thick vest that's going to give me protection over my core body. So a vest is very beneficial because it kind of bridges the gap between being too warm and not warm enough. So a vest is a nice option for you to consider. Under the vest, I have a full fleece top, and in colder months, okay, again, a lot of snow or temperatures for me in my area of 20 degrees or below, I would opt to put on fleece pants underneath my outer garment. So under my canvas pants, I may have some fleece pants on as well to serve as additional warmth. So the fleece, again, traps air close to your body, is a very nice mid layer. And then for my base layer, I'm going to be having some type of a moisture wicking fabric. So moisture wicking fabric, such as this right here, is a 100% merino wool base layer. I prefer merino wool, again, because even when wet, it's antibacterial, it's moisture wicking, and again, when wet, it will retain some of its insulative value. So in the summer months, however, I might go with an Under Armour or some other type of thinner gauge moisture wicking material. So whatever your choice is, be sure and have that base layer. That's going to be on the top and the bottom. So these different layers are going to enable you to work more effectively in the cold winter months, and that is your first line of defense as far as shelter is concerned against the elements. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to set up an emergency shelter. To erect an emergency shelter, you're going to need a few different items. You're going to need some type of a cordage, some type of an emergency blanket, and this, you're going to want a reusable space blanket. Something that is reflective on one side, non-reflective, and preferably orange or signaling color on the opposite side. And then you're going to need some sticks or some tent stakes. depending on how prepared you are. I'm now going to show you how to tie the first knot for the emergency shelter. These knots can be very difficult to get, especially by watching on television as you are now. So you're going to want to research these on your own. There are a lot of YouTube videos and free resources to help you understand these knots better. But the first knot is called a Siberian hitch. I'm simply going to place it around my tree or post in this case, wrap it around my hand, secure it with my right hand, and I will not move this hand anymore. My left hand will come under and over the line, and where my right hand has the line grasp, I'll grab it between these two fingers and pull it through the loop. Once I get that, I'll work the knot back and forth until I get it tight. There's a loop coming over top, and I'm just going to press it with my thumb to tighten it up. And then I'll pull, and that will secure that knot. Now, to untie the knot, all I have to do is pull, and it's untied. So that's why we use that knot. It's very quick to untie. That again, push that snug with my thumb, and then I'll slide it up. This knot has a tendency to look loose. If you just pull on it fast before you use your thumb to tighten and snug that over top line up, it'll look loose and make a big loop. It'll look like it's getting ready to come undone. Don't fret. All you have to do is put a toggle or a piece of stick, such as this one, through that loop and pull it, and that'll secure that knot. Now you can pull as hard as you want, and it's not coming undone. To undo it, you simply pull out the stick, pull, and you're untied once again. So once more, go around my hand, and I secure it with my right hand. I come under and over the line, and I grab it with two fingers, what's in my right hand. And then I'll pull it through the loop, secure it, and then where the line crosses over the loop, I'm going to press it tight with the thumb of my left hand. Once I get there, I just pull, and I'm finished. Now we'll move on to the next knot. Our second knot is actually a two-part knot. 3 feet from the tree or post that I'm tying to, I'm going to create a loop. I'm simply going to turn the rope back upon itself and pull it up through the bottom, creating a simple loop. You'll know you've tied that loop correctly if you can simply pull on the line and it comes undone. So I'm going to throw it back upon itself, make a very simple loop just like so. Then I'm going to loop it around my post, put the end through that loop, and cinch it up nice and tight. You can see how tight I've got that. It should make that nice twanging sound once you get it tight enough. Where I've pulled it through that loop, I'm going to grab both sides of the line on this side and this side and pinch it really tight. I'm then going to throw that same loop I've just made back upon itself, reach down and pull straight up and create a simple tightening knot which will secure it all in place. You'll know you've tied it correctly because all you have to do is pull and everything will come undone. Here, and it's undone. So we have a very simple knot system that makes life a little easier when you're pulling down your shelters. There's one knot. Loop it around, run it through. I'll cinch it tight. I'll pinch it really good. And then I'm just going to turn it upon itself once more. Grab down through the bottom and pull. And now I have it secured once more. It's at this stage that I'll take my tarp and begin to attach it. Spread my tarp out. And I will take the loop that I've created and put it through the grommet on my tarp. And it's at this stage that I'll insert a toggle or a tent stake and tighten it down to secure one side of this tent. Now that the opposite side has been secured, I'm going to take a single piece of string about 12 to 18 inches long and simply tie it with a couple overhead knots through this grommet. And at this point, I'm going to throw it 3 times over my ridge line. 1, 2, and 3. Once I have that established, I'm going to wrap it all the way around the line, pull back through the 3rd loop that I created. So 1, 2, and 3. I'll go ahead and pull that loop now to make it a little easier. Wrap everything up. And pull through the center. You'll know you have it tied correctly when you can just unloop it and pull and everything comes undone. 1, 2, 3. Open up that loop. Everything's snug. Now this is called a slippery hitch, and it is a sliding knot. My tarp is loose, and all I have to do is slide it down, and now my tarp is tight. Once again, all I have to do is pull the string, and it all comes undone quite easily. Now all that remains to be completed is the back side of the stake. To do that, we're simply going to make a quick loop out of our cordage. We're going to work it one end of the loop through the grommet, open that loop and put the opposite end through itself. That way it is secured on the grommet. Then we'll take a simple stick or a tent stake. We'll sharpen one end. Just enough for us to jam it into the ground. And we'll tighten up our tarp. And that's how you make a quick and effective emergency shelter.